Welcome to Sacred Conversations, a place where Dr. Nicole Dolan and I, Robin Bethel, along with a myriad of guests, explore some of the sacred threads and wholeness of life, held within the light and within the dark, held within the immensity. Thank you for being with us. In this episode, Nicole and I reflect on this notion and reality of being seen in a variety of ways. Of course, Sacred Conversations is a part of that. It's been about 1 year since we recorded our first episode in this project. It is one new way we are experiencing being seen. And so this seemed like a well-timed moment for reflection. But for both of us, this podcast is just one piece in a larger tapestry. And before we wade into the conversation itself, I'd like to share a few other notes of that. Nicole has recently signed with a talent agent who's not only looking to find her raw, intimate memoir a publishing home, but is also pursuing other possible developments around the project, all of which could bring Nicole and her private life further into the public eye. This podcast has brought Nicole to new spaces, and now as her book journey takes new turns, her nervous system's having to open to a reality that includes being much more visible. This journey of visibility has brought up a number of things for Nicole. For me, I began posting, sometimes in a fairly personal way, to a public Instagram account a few years ago. Then, since the beginning of 2025, I've started 3 podcasts, a Substack that has shared pieces of my writing drafts, and 2 YouTube channels that feature my face, my poetry, and other offerings of my heart. I'm creating and sharing in love, without a need for any of it to do or become anything in particular. And in all honesty, it's generally felt like a natural, easy unfolding. Still, there have been some growth edges. In this episode, we talk more about this podcast specifically over the last year, but these other areas are part of a larger context held in our minds and hearts. I also talk of something that isn't directly connected to either the podcast journey we've shared here or necessarily even being seen in a more public-facing way, but simply touches into the idea of being seen at all at its most basic level, appearance, and my shifting relationship to my own. We hope you enjoy listening, and if you'd like to join the conversation and share your own journey in any of these areas, we'd love to hear from you. Just check the show notes for how to get in touch.
Good morning, Robin.
Good morning, Nicole.
So we are jumping in today in shared conversation, just the two of us, from a place of not always knowing where we're going. We have a couple of ideas, a couple of thoughts in mind. As we spoke for a couple minutes before we hit that record button, we were discussing that we're still in our anoretic degree journey. If you listened to one of our last podcasts, we talked about that quite a bit and what that means. And so there's still a lot unfolding, a lot that maybe is still in the process of integration, meaning making, and maybe not even there yet, right? Just like threads that are still coming together. So,
Yeah, I want to
uh,
jump in. I want
yeah.
to jump in and say, for me, I would say I wouldn't use the word integration even, but rather like taking external shape. You
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
know, I feel the coherence quite particularly, although like day by day it seems to find new levels, right?
mm-hmm.
We're talking about just like I was telling Nicole, the other day I had 4 hours of almost utter physical stillness, and it was a wild morning. Continually finding that, but still, I feel it's kind of like a day by day, you know, I guess new integration of the waves of inner movement that are just happening, in these subtle ways. But also on the anoretic degree, I wanted to chime in because we started talking about that a couple episodes ago. Um, the episode called, oh my gosh, how did I forget the name? At the Precipice.
Okay,
Um,
yes. Yeah.
And that was one where I was first introducing that as a verb because I use it as a verb. I'm
Mhm.
anaretic degreeing it. And in that episode, you asked me specifically, okay, are we collectively, though, at an anaretic degree astrologically? And in that episode, I really didn't know. I knew we were approaching it with some transits at some point, but I didn't know exactly where we were. And after the episode, I found out we'd either just moved into it or we were the next day or something like that. And so, just in terms of sharing the astrology of the anaretic degree, we have been in it in two really large placements for a few months now, a couple months, a few months. There were two really large placements at that final 29th degree before they move into the 0 degrees of the next sign. And it's kind of like birth canal energy.
Mm.
It's very much this precipice energy, the final tensions before, a certain space releases, shifts, or moves in some way into another. Just since we've talked about anaretic degreeing it so much, I just thought I'd put out there really clearly.
Yeah. It aligns to, for those who are resonant with this, with the year of the snake that people have been talking about, right? And so like
Right?
that final shedding is still happening. And I think it's funny you jumped in there and you're like, yeah, it doesn't feel like integration. I was like, I could energetically feel it when I said it. I was like, nope, that word's not going to resonate. We're going to need another one. So thank you. And I agree. But yeah, and then the other word you used is coherence. And instantly I saw kind of like mind, body, soul. And it reminded me what came up in me is certainly in my own journey, I've been coming into coherence with all three of those. And it's funny because there are probably times in my life where I would say, oh, I'd already done that. But as you know, last year for me, a lot was about being like deeply embodied. And so I'm really feeling this coherence too. So I was really resonating with that as
Mhm.
well. So we talked about maybe discussing today a little bit about visibility. So Robin and I have been on a podcast for a year now. And we've shared very openly and honestly what that's been like in moments, right? Like in the beginning, being like, use this clip. No, don't use that clip. And so I think that a year later, having landed in a place where it's like, what's most important to us is to speak the truth and be in discernment with like, what we share and things like that. So I'll open it up to you first, if that's comfortable, just to kind of bring you into a space of like, yeah, if we're talking about visibility, if we're talking about what it's like to come into a newer place, the both of us, and as all of us are stepping into new places, and there's different ways that we can become visible, right? Like if you're podcasting, if you're, trying to get your business going on Instagram, right? If you're speaking, or maybe you're just showing more parts of yourselves to friends, family, loved ones. So wherever that goes, I'm just opening the space into visibility.
Okay. Well, I'll start and I'll just say I feel historically, like at least in terms of my adult life, I'm deeply comfortable with being seen for the most part,
Mhm.
in like this inner self way, like what is inside of me. And I feel like I share it at the level that I know is the right place for different containers. With certain people, I feel like, I mean, that's kind of easy for me. With the podcast, I feel like I would say the same in terms of inner journey in ways because I feel there's so much that I want to share. And then I know things that it's not the space that I would share that. And it hasn't really been much of attention. It feels like it's been a natural base. And I just, there are certain things that we talk about where our stories are. And then there are certain times when I would say it doesn't feel like there's a lot to bring forth because the level of maybe subtlety in the movements isn't what would fit within the container. Like for me, what I really care about is offering an authentic sense of expressing something. And then I understand that how people receive it will be their own way, you know?
Mm, mhm.
And in a way, I've always kind of been accepting of that, like that people may not understand me how I'm understanding it. I've had people in my life say things like, "Robin, when you talk, it sounds like a poem. Like I don't know what you're saying," you know. And I just roll with it. Like I just share how I share. What people
Mhm.
absorb and take from it, they will. So in a way,
Mm.
I'm very comfortable with that. But I really like what I share to feel like for me, it's striking this really authentic resonance to then be held and interpreted however it will, you know?
Yeah.
So, one space where I did have a little bit of needing to come into more acceptance was with how much we talk about things that are so alive inside of us and like something that I have such a high volume of feeling and just like presence with if we drop into it and I speak about it for what may even sound like a large chunk, maybe 5 minutes in a row, I'm still just pulling from certain spaces that, unless I'm really sitting in kind of more silence by myself, I'm not fully present with like in reaching the fullness of it in a
Mhm.
way. And then after, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I talked about this one thing and I didn't think to even mention this one part of it, which is maybe like a fundamental aspect. But I was just so opening into this other fundamental aspect. And then when you don't hear the other one, and so I had to kind of come to peace with the sense of offering incomplete, authentic expressions that then did not hold nearly the fullness as I held it because when volume is so high, it's just, especially in two-way conversation, which is faster than if I'm, sitting alone. It's
Mhm.
interesting because my other podcast, Voice Note Me, I feel like I don't have that happen as much, but I'm sitting by myself,
Mhm.
and so
Mhm.
I'm still just speaking without having planned anything, but my presence is fully with myself
Right.
rather than here it's split as it should be, right? It's kind of
Right.
half with myself, half with you. And
Yeah.
so I feel like my indexing isn't as complete or
Mhm.
whatnot. And so I've
Mhm.
kind of had to come to accept that, and I feel comfortable with it now. But I just had a few kind of growing pains where I was like, "Oh, I forgot this," how
Mhm.
and just to think, okay, like, this is just how I am in live conversation with someone. I'm a bit of an intellectual butterfly energy sometimes, and where I'm flitting on all the flowers and roses and everything, like, I may neglect one of my most beloved roses there. I'm getting excited about that. Anyway, so that's been, pretty easy, but just something that I was aware of as we went. And then also, I feel like kind of the bigger as in still, I feel like it didn't take up a whole lot of space with us, but was just this question of being more like, okay, if we have a clip to post and
Mhm.
I don't feel like it's a very pretty one,
Yeah.
like I'm more okay with that, and I feel
Mhm.
like for me it's coincided this time of where I feel like I've been called to be more seen in a variety of places in a way that's just like bringing more of what's inside of me out into the world in a
Mhm.
variety of places in kind of a compressed time. And I feel like that has felt just really right. It has been pretty smooth and just like following that energy. And really, I would say the only place where it even brings into question like anything about appearance would be our video clips, which is such
Mhm.
a small piece of
Mhm.
what we do and the time we spend on anything. So I don't mean to make it sound like a bigger thing than it is, because
Yeah.
but it's
Mhm.
interesting because this year too, that's coincided with kind of a simultaneous and not really attached to, video clips or whatnot, but just like a growing being less attached to appearance in general for
Mhm.
me, which I feel like has been like these gifts of these things. So, one thing I've talked about on this podcast is this trust fall with my work and where my energy goes and just holding that space. So, one detail of that is all of 2025. So, I've had hair extensions since 2020, and all of 2025, I could not afford to go have my hair extension appointment. So, I
Hmm.
let it be, and it still looked pretty just normal most of the year. And then by the end of August, I was like, "Okay, like,
Mhm.
this cannot stand." So I took them out with pliers myself one night, and, um, and it was so I had such an attachment to having hair
Mm.
extensions, like,
Mhm.
to that piece of appearance, and the letting go of that, which was this gift from not being able to afford the appointments for that, that was like a letting go, it was like a releasing of that attachment that I had there, and I also feel um, like being 20 pounds heavier than I'm really comfortable has been a gift too this year.
Hmm.
I am more comfortable lighter, but I think it was really destined to not be this year. I feel like having all that come together, releasing the attachment to hair extensions, really at the same time being in a place where I weighed more, and also like my hair graying. The end of
Mhm.
2024, my hair really started graying underneath a lot. Oh, I've sent you a picture before. And as someone who, for a lot of periods in my life, I have been attached to appearance and things, I just feel like there's a lot of detachment from that that's
Yeah.
been happening. And then the podcast, the video clips, it's kind of a separate thing. And it's just like been intertwining kind of.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think actually what came up with our podcast things were probably earlier in the year. Probably like more, we probably had that like, okay, it doesn't matter as much earlier. And then maybe, yeah, I took out my hair extensions in like August or September. So that was, it sounds like a little thing, but it was really a release of something. I wouldn't have done it if I would have been able to afford those appointments still this year. But
Mhm.
now I don't see myself going back, like whatever amount of money I have, because I feel like I don't think almost, I mean, I loved having them, but I just don't feel like it would be the right space, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
I just don't feel like I could. Yeah, I don't wanna say anything about, like, having hair extensions because but it's kind
Mhm.
of like with graying hair.
I
I've
feel like it's
always.
very symbolic too, what you're sharing. It's not
Exactly, it is.
necessarily about the extensions, right?
Exactly,
So,
it is, but and
whatever that
also.
is for each of us as
Yeah,
women, right?
exactly, and I feel like with I've always just dyed my hair on and off for fun, like,
Mhm.
it's all I just
Mhm.
dye it like a different shade of brown, I dye it a little darker, I dye it this, and I just have done it since my 20s, and now I'm really aware. I feel like that's a really valid space. I may wanna keep playing with the shade of it, right? But I also feel like we live in this world where it just seems like the default, like you're supposed to dye your hair so the gray is not there, and that actually really
Mm.
bothers me. And
Yeah.
so I feel like the sense of even though I've always kind of played with my hair, like I want the gray to show because I do like embodying whatever physical beauty is mine to reflect. I like embodying that. I'm not going to say that I don't, but I don't want to do anything that is about trying to look younger than I am, actually.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I feel
Yeah.
that didn't have a whole lot to do with the podcast. I feel most of it has been a little bit aside from the sense of being publicly seen.
Mhm.
It's more just lessening attachment to physical appearance, but it tied in. So,
Yeah. I think I mean, it's absolutely part of it, and
yeah.
I really honor you for being so vulnerable in it, and even if I don't know if it
Mhm.
feels vulnerable to you, but, well, I guess I can just ask you if it's vulnerable to you to share because it's like, that could be hard for somebody to share, you know? And
Yeah.
so I appreciate you speaking to it. I think that it's a real female experience, right? There's
Yeah.
so much, obviously, we all know that there's so much that we've been conditioned towards, and there's so much projected onto us as women. And it's funny because it's such an internal journey, like nobody cares, like I love you. I've spent time with you in
Mhm.
person. We're friends. Like
Mhm.
I couldn't tell you when you had hair extensions and when you don't,
Yeah.
like, I've noticed
Yeah.
nothing of the difference. I'm surprised too to hear that it took pliers to get them out. I know nothing about this.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have little beads. Mine
Okay.
were sewn in. They put little beads, and
Mhm.
then they, like, stitch in these whiffs,
Okay.
but they're all different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the most important things for us as women, at least for me, is like if you are going to do something like that, just make sure you're doing it for yourself, right?
Mhm.
And I do think so many of us are. There's also a sacred truth for us as women that we get to make that choice, and I think that we often are making it for ourselves.
Mhm.
So I think it's a vulnerable discussion. I think before we got on here, we're like, we don't always have to talk about vulnerable things.
No, that's not
Yeah.
what what we're saying, okay, now I wanna say this, is
Yeah.
I wanted to just say, because I think it's not always about a question of whether you're willing to be vulnerable or not. I think it's
Mhm.
a question of discernment, and I just think
Yes.
that there's a lot of things, like, for me at least, it's not really a question of being vulnerable or
Mhm.
open, it's a question of feeling into the space, and there are a
Mhm.
lot of things that for me, a public broadcast wouldn't be the space. And not even for the most obvious reasons, not even because that's not the right sacred container for something that belongs just to me or belongs within close relationship, but sometimes, the subtlety of movement, like the felt shape, I usually always have a pretty deep sense of the felt shape of what is happening, like the coherence. I feel
Mhm.
like I'm kind of with it, like, it grows and integrates in this daily way where I usually do feel that
Yeah.
inner coherence, and, so what I express, I want it to accurately reflect the truth as I feel it, and sometimes we're at such a level of nuance and such a
Mhm.
level of slight movements that it's not going to reflect the truth of anything unless, I talk about something in nuance for an hour,
Mhm.
and if not, then it's not going to really feel like it's even true there to me. So that's what I was saying.
Mhm. No, I hear you, and I think that you're bringing in a multifaceted, approach and journey of what it is that you're sharing. Like, there's so many pieces that you're bringing in, and so I'm just kind of focusing
Yeah,
on one for a moment because I'm like, "Okay, I
right.
gotta tell you this about" and I
Yeah.
think it's so resonant for so many women, even men, right? Even men, especially
Yeah.
as they're aging, right, are
Mhm.
paying attention to things in moments and
We're a
whatever else.
world attached to appearance?
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
and
Yes.
there's a level, it's like, it's nice to look at a beautiful rose, right? There
Mm.
is something beautiful in what we look at, and so I feel like enjoying that about the person we love or about ourselves, things that we see and we find beautiful in a physical way, I think there's room for that too, and then we also just have so much attachment to it that goes beyond that, right? That goes
Right.
into a whole lot of spaces where maybe we have room to let things go.
Well, and I think nothing challenges that more than visibility. Like, even as you were saying earlier, and I know I watched you go through that growth edge, right? Of like, wait, I forgot to say this thing, and it's so
I know,
meaningful to me. How did I leave it out? I
yeah,
need to go put it back in there. And I
and
get
I
that.
often add it to
And
the introduction.
you add it, and you always get to go back and add it to the intro.
I still do my best to layer it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. But I was just gonna say when you were saying that, it's like it's not just you and me, it's also a camera. And like it makes a difference. It really
Mhm,
does. It takes time to get used to it. And so, like I said, like whether someone listening is on a podcast or not, so many of
mhm,
us feel this even just being on social media, right? Everybody posting, of course, their most beautiful images, their most perfect
mhm,
family pictures, etc. There's such a pressure for perfectionism, for
mhm,
beauty. There's so much conditioning. And I will say, like, I'm feeling visibility on multiple levels in ways that I didn't know was a thing, to be honest. I think, certainly starting on, being on camera more with the things that we're doing and then the things for my book starting to happen and then the marketing team and things like that. It's like coming into a place myself where being on camera more, it does bring up a lot. It's almost like having, I mean, it is, it's like having a mirror in your face all the time, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um, and I do feel grateful, especially for this space where we've processed some of it really openly and honestly.
mhm,
And then also, systematic desensitization. Just do it over and over again until you're feeling
Yeah.
better about
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, I recently started reading Brene Brown's Braving the Wilderness,
Mm.
and she talks about, I haven't gotten there in the book so far, so I can't say if she talks about this in the book, but I was inspired to read this book from her talking about this somewhere else where I'd seen it. And she was saying, when I did my first TED Talk, I had such a vulnerability hangover. I was so uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And she's like, and the things that were going through my mind were wild, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wore that outfit, or my posture could look better, or I don't
Mhm.
really like how I look in that frame, or what's, that mean girl in high school going to think about me, or that boy that I liked. So she just talked about how it just like it brings up like, my own language is almost like, I don't know if I'd say like arrested development aspects of the psyche, but certainly like younger aspects of the psyche come into the
Mm.
room too, when it's like,
Mhm.
you kind of have to go through those feelings you had when you were younger too, of like being amongst peers and how are they going to perceive me. So certainly on the level of image, I think it's a really honest conversation to say like that's part of it. And that's been part of it for
Mhm.
me too. Somebody puts something out with like the wrong lighting and I look like I'm sunburned and I'm like, damn it, but
Yeah.
but it's okay. It's a process, as you're saying, of
Mhm.
like really letting go, really learning to come home to myself and land fully. The other thing I would say for me with visibility is feeling, especially as a psychologist, like in my field, feeling like I have to, make sure that I'm saying the right thing, not necessarily
Mhm.
perfectly, because I certainly don't, but don't quote the wrong author, don't like say the
Mhm.
wrong theory, because someone's going to have
Mhm.
an opinion about that. And certainly, we all know that the more that you become visible, the more that people are also happy to come forth and challenge you in different ways. And
Mhm.
so it's been an interesting process. And like I said, as things are starting to happen with my book and other things that, my agent is working towards with me, it's been an interesting feeling to kind of sit in the space of like stepping into something new that is visible. And the irony about that too is like I've always loved being seen, I've always wanted to be seen. Even when I wasn't in my days of being seen, I was like desiring, like it was like kind of like my inner pain, honestly, used to be
Mhm.
around being seen, like, oh, I wish
Mhm.
I would have been able to show up fully as myself. Or maybe, that relationship would have gone better if I could have spoken my truth, or if you could only see me, you would feel me, you would see me. Like it was very much like a big part of my adolescent psyche, this great, great need to be seen. And even
Mhm.
in kind of a painful way, in ways. I always loved that song Iris from the Goo Goo Dolls.
Mm. Yeah.
I just want you to know who I am.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is that as I've come into being seen, something's changing in me now, which is
Mhm.
really, really interesting. My double Capricorn, like Aquarius, all of the like really intense things about me, and then all the like wild energy in me. I'm wildly, wildly independent. I am at the top tier of independence when it comes to a woman, but I feel like reaching the threshold, maybe not the threshold, but like reaching a place within myself of being seen has actually started to soften me and bring me into a place of just wanting to be held and
Mhm.
met, which I think is quite fascinating, actually.
Mhm.
So it's like this journey that my psyche went on for a very long time, all of my life so far, of,
Mhm.
wanting to be seen, needing to be seen, then being seen. What does that mean? What does that feel like? How do I deal with that?
Mhm.
And then like, okay, we've been seen. Now we just want to like when I imagine, speaking on stages more, doing
Mhm.
more retreats, doing more work with people, when I imagine being busier and busier out there, I
Mhm.
imagine like, okay, and then I need to come home and just like rest and be completely in a space where like all nervous system needs are honored and met, and I can just like fall. And for many people that might feel, yeah, of course, like we all feel that way. Like we work really hard at work and then we come home and we rest, and I don't, not
Mhm.
never. I've gotten better about it, but I've been a workaholic before. I don't think I'm a workaholic now, but I've been, a mother with autism and ADHD and toddler in my home, and I still am.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of factors why I don't get to like fully rest in ways, but I think really recognizing that in myself has allowed me to start to create the spaces where I can be met and where I can rest. So anyways, I'm just sharing that part because it's coming in to be shared, so here you are.
Mhm.
But I'm sharing it because it's really interesting to me, and it's something that's happening for me right now too, is it's like, "Oh, okay, this need finally got met or something enough," over time
Mhm.
and while being challenged along the way too, but
Mhm.
then that has turned into a need for rest and safety
Mhm.
and calm and peace.
Interesting. Haven't you always wanted to really be held and met? Like, it's felt to me like you've always had that deep craving.
I have, absolutely, yes. But I don't think I was able to receive that. Like, even if so it's like I still set up situation and this is all not conscious, right? This is like what we all
Mhm.
not we don't all have the same pattern, but we all have our own patterns that we create from the
Mhm.
unconscious. So it's not conscious, but what I did for years is I created situations that couldn't hold me. They couldn't
Mhm.
meet me. And
Mhm.
the truth is I don't think I was able to receive that fully. I don't think I was in a place where
Mhm.
I could be held, you know?
Mhm.
So and that does come from I mean, from many things, but I remember as a child there being a moment where I had gone through this traumatic incident during the day. I got hurt at the swimming pool. And I remember the moment where, I was in my mother's arms and I remember saying to myself as a 8-year-old child, like, yeah, this is the last time that she's going to really be able to hold me. Like I'm going to
Mhm.
outgrow her at this age. So I have lived, in the conscious light, oh, very independently, and many women will resonate with this. It's like, yes, and genuinely, I appreciate my independence. It's real. And also, some people might say it's a trauma response, right? Which I
Mhm.
don't really love that language to describe it. But what I would say is it was a part of my soul path where I was meant to get to, but part of it was painful too. Like
Yeah.
I didn't really feel like there were people in the world that could hold me. So what did I do? I held
Mhm.
others, right?
Yeah. I don't wanna, like, put words over your experience in a way that might not fit. But I feel like
Well,
sometimes I see or I've seen things where it almost feels like, I don't know, like an asking to be held in something, like, in a way that I thought maybe made you feel safer.
mhm,
Um, Even in, like, kind of physical things, like, kind of like an inviting someone else to hold that,
mhm,
um,
mhm.
and thinking it maybe was like a seeking of safety, um, in, like, these really small ways, so I don't know, I feel like I've felt that sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly since you've met me, I have been able to I have not been closed off to receiving care
Mhm.
since you met
Yeah.
me. Like there was a point in my life where I did not let anybody hold me. I did not tell anybody what was going on with me. I just focused on everybody else, everything outside of me. I was either doing something crazy and wild with my energy or I
Mhm.
was tuning in to other people to help and
Mhm.
support them. That's what I did.
Yeah.
certainly by the time we had met, I was 30 something, right? So I had done enough inner work that I was open to receiving. I did allow people to support me. Even you were a support to me, right? Like
Mhm.
if you think about it, it's like you came in to help me with my book, and not in just like a simple, I send you, a manuscript and you make a few changes and send back to me. It's like you journeyed with me, you witnessed me, you mirrored me. It was supportive, and I certainly could receive that. So I
Yeah.
would say, honestly, this is probably more like the anaretic degree of it.
Mm, okay.
Me-
Yeah.
Meaning, like, and where does that show up in my most, romantic relationships, right? Because in our deepest intimacy, those are going to be, probably the last places that we're going to allow ourselves to be
Mm,
held or receive fully.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely have wanted that at some level, but then
Yeah.
whether you yeah.
And you've watched me go through that. Like, you've watched me, like, if we had to sum it up into a sentence, it's like Nicole just wants to be met. Yeah,
Mhm,
like, for
mhm,
years, right? What needed to happen is first I needed to meet myself fully.
mm,
I had to stop abandoning myself. I had to start showing up for me 100%,
mm,
drawing boundaries where they needed to be drawn, realizing what is right for me, what's not, discernment. And then as we, kind of I mentioned before, like last year for me was a lot around the body. And it's like, so as soon as I stopped self-abandoning, my body came online in such a big way. I mean,
mm,
such a big way. It was like I had mind body connection before, of course. I'd done a lot of work, but I mean, man, like my body just started leading the show. Like my journey with self-abandonment,
mm,
becoming conscious of it, wow. But certainly once I did, it was like the ultimate homecoming,
mm,
It was the ultimate coming home to myself, and that started creating coherence. It also created in a time in my life where, I created so much space for myself to go through that process,
mm,
meaning, like, I really wasn't available to give.
mhm,
And so that's kinda interesting in itself, just that idea, right? Like, in order to get to the place where I could fully receive and allow myself to be fully met, I had to get to a place where I couldn't give.
mm,
I had to stop giving.
mm.
So I don't really know how we got there, but it's a sacred conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm
For
okay
sure.
I'm okay sharing it, because
Yeah.
it's truth.
Mhm,
It's truth. And that is what I really strive to do here with you and
mhm,
on this planet, is tell the truth as much as I can in a way that is supportive for others. Because
mhm,
in my experience, not enough people tell the truth, and too many of us feel alone.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
This space is a place where you do that so much, and a place where I like to share what's inside of me in the way I feel like it's meant to come out, And I know I feel like the way we hold that can be different at times, but I feel like one of the things that I think you feel really called to do in your public work relates to your home life.
Mhm.
Like
Sure.
you
Yeah.
feel like aspects of your own personal mothering world are part
Mhm.
of what you're meant to be a voice around, right, in the community. So
Yeah.
you naturally have this space of feeling called to bring that forward.
Yeah.
And so, whereas if someone doesn't feel called to particularly bring that forward, that might fall into the camp of like, this belongs to me, this belongs within the presence of people I know and am close with, right? So I feel like it's different, but that's part of your calling that you
Mhm.
feel is that space. So
Well, and
um
I have that too, I have parts that I don't bring
of course.
here, but I mean, the truth is at some point I probably will, right? Like, because I live such a complex, controversial life in ways.
Mm.
And when I'm in the moments of, you said so beautifully, instead of integrating, what did you say? You didn't say externalizing.
Oh, it felt like instead of being a moment of things needing to integrate within, it felt more like a moment of just allowing them to take external form.
External form.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because you do speak like a poet, and I like it. Allowing things to take external form. And yes, like when I'm in something, just like the rest of us, it's like, we
Mhm.
kind of wait for it to shape itself. But then, yes, I often feel called to bring experiences from myself and my inner world outward, because
Mhm.
my experiences usually are like, they're not the norm. It's not to say that there's
Yeah.
not people going through those experiences, but they're not the norm typically in ways, and they often push us to expand our capacity for complexity. So instead of
Mm,
holding the world in like a black and white, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't, this is what's okay, this is not okay, this is what this should
yeah.
look like, this is what it shouldn't. I am like the master of like the
Mhm.
opposite of that. And I
That
think it's important. So, yes. Yeah.
I love you're saying that, and then I thought too, I'm like, "Oh, I think so much." I feel called to just share who I am in, variety of ways and things, and just share. It feels like just this inner being, like, let it spill out more widely, but when you said expand the capacity, help people deepen their capacities to hold complexity, I feel
Yes.
like in this one particular story that I've been sharing about, and I know I will more over time when the moments are right too, right? Where what I can express can be expressed authentically within the container. Something it's meant to do is to help people deepen into their sense of safety, safety
Mhm.
and trust. Expand the capacity
Mhm.
um, to let go of fear, be in safety and trust, and then
Yeah.
so we've
Yeah.
got a nice pot of soup here.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yeah. I hear that, and I believe that for you too, and I think you create so much of that. So,
Well,
yeah.
here's our Valentine's Day episode for
Yeah.
everyone. This mishmash and also just celebrating. We launched the first episode in March, but we did record it on Valentine's Day. So it is like a 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing for anyone listening. I'm just mentioning this because we're talking about being seen. And one of my meditative imaginings is actually about seeing yourself truly and letting yourself be seen. And
Mm.
so I'm going to link to that in the show notes in case anyone wants to listen. And that audio quality is not some of my best, so you're going to get beauty and imperfection all tangled up in that one.
Perfect.
In case it may meet anyone well, you can listen.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
And
happy
happy anniversary.
Valentine's Day.
Yes. Happy, almost out of Anoretic Degree and
Yeah.
Valentine's Day and anniversary.
Yes, happy anniversary. Thank you for being with us today. If you feel called, follow the podcast wherever you listen and connect with us on Instagram or YouTube at sacred.conversations.podcast. And most of all, may you keep opening to yourself, to the mystery, and to the story within you that's still being written.